I thought I'd start by telling you a little bit more about myself and how I got to where I am today. As a clinician, seeing the challenges that we face day in, day out, I've always been excited about how technology can help solve some of those problems. It's a term that often comes up, frontline innovation. We are the clinicians serving, trying to deliver that service, but we see those limitations, and how do we use those limitations, that understanding, to actually make changes and bring in innovations going to help us solve that. So through my journey, I joined the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Program. I am part of the Royal College of Surgeons Future of Surgery Commission, setting out the landscape of what the future of healthcare is going to look like. And I've had a number of posts in faculty and research looking at technology and its adoption in healthcare. So I hope that gives me some credibility to be standing here talking to you today about what we found as some of the problems that we're facing and how we've tried to adopt technology to achieve a solution. But as you know, we are living through that fourth epoch of technological advancement, the information age. And it's a time where digital technology is really changing how we communicate, how we socialize, how we work and play across all sectors of our life and kind of our day-to-day activities. But what does that really mean for healthcare? And all these technologies that are erupting at the moment, how are these going to transform how we deliver healthcare? Are they going to, and if we see what these technologies are, they range from robotics to genomics, AR and VR, obviously new words that are spun around a lot, 3D printing, digital health. But whilst these are exciting technologies, what does it actually mean for us at the front line delivering that healthcare? Is that going to replace doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals? Or is it going to empower us? Is it going to augment our skills? Is it going to scale the expertise that we have? Because we know that there always will be a limitation in the number of clinicians and healthcare professionals that can deliver care. And if we think about the future, what should it look like? Should we be finding ways to share and crowdsource knowledge into unique platforms? If we look at how people use social media, there's so much content in there. People are sharing everything from what they had for breakfast to what time they went to the gym, all the shopping, everything they're doing online. But what about healthcare? Could we not find a way and a platform that allows us to crowdsource our knowledge, our experiences, be it emotional, be it clinical, and how can we then use that to deliver better care to the patients? Because at the end of the day, we have to deliver better care to patients. And every single patient, no matter where they are, in the UK, around the world, delivers that same quality of healthcare. And if we look at those technologies that have been disrupting healthcare over the last few years, there are a number of them, but what I was really drawn to augmented reality a few years ago, and it was a time when Google Glass had just come out with their first version. And I was really excited about the possibility of bringing real-world content and overlaying it with digital content and computer-generated content, from visualization to sound to patient information. How could that really augment the care, delivery of care that I wanted to deliver and help me do it better, more efficiently, quicker, safer, faster? And of course, I wasn't the only one who thought that AR and VR was exciting. Bigger tech leaders have thought that too, and it is really shifting towards what the future of healthcare and other industries is going to look like. But whilst we talk about the exciting technologies, what we really need to take a step back and look at what is the landscape in healthcare looking like? What are the global issues that we are facing? And these are not issues just for the UK, and they're not issues just for the developing world. They're issues that are global. We need to improve the quality of care that we deliver. We need to deliver it more effectively, more efficiently, at less cost. And of course, we need to look at the global health landscape that we're living in, where the WHO and the Lancet Commission published that 2/3 of the world's population lack access to simple surgical care. 5 billion people. That's huge, and we're never going to be able to create the number of healthcare professionals that we need to try and match this problem. It's simply a supply and demand problem. And so why can't we look at ways that technology can help us scale what we have, to force multiply what we have, to be able to deliver that care? And if we look at what the future of surgery, for example, may look like, you may have seen this scene from Doctor Strange, where he's virtually traveled, and I'm sorry it's coming up a bit dark, but he's almost holographically there, hovering over the patient, trying to tell her what needs to be done, putting his hand over the body so that she can place the injection at the exact right point. And you may think this is very futuristic and something far from what we can achieve these days, but actually it's something that we're doing at the moment. And that's where the idea of Proximie came. The idea that I could be able to be sitting anywhere in the world and guide and collaborate and train and work with other colleagues no matter where they were. And if I'm honest, it started from an austere environment, an NGO type approach, looking at how we could try and scale expertise to try and support people around the world. But what we realized as we were developing this platform is that this solves a lot of problems for us even here. And you can see from the video that I showed earlier, this is solving problems if we look at the hub and spoke models in healthcare. If we look at community nursing and how they need to support wound care management, where you need senior experts to deal with more complex things. Or you look at how we transfer skills in new techniques such as colorectal cancer. Just yesterday we did a case between Amsterdam and Cardiff. It was a new technique in the management of low rectal colorectal cancer. And the specialist from Amsterdam was able to guide the surgeon in Cardiff through this new technique to deliver the best care that that patient needed. Something that he may have not been able to do on his own. It's not that he's not a skilled surgeon, he's a very skilled surgeon, he's actually the clinical lead for the department. But he knew that by having that colleague from Amsterdam, he could deliver better care to the patient. And that's the idea of the kind of virtual collaboration and sharing knowledge through this platform. And as I said, when you jump into that live interaction, it's about being able to overlay the content and the digital information that you need. But what's more important is that we are very clinician driven. So the whole concept came from doctors, myself and a few colleagues, and we wanted to make sure that every single step of the way, every single feature that we added was important for doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals, and it was something that we found useful. So it's not just the tech industry or the gaming industry saying you need to try this because it's very exciting. It's actually, well, what do I need? What's the simple, practical way I'm going to be able to take this technology and deliver a solution? And so things that we need are, how can I bring imaging into my field as opposed to having to log into a second and a third computer to open that scan? How can I bring in voice recognition so that I can try and prompt things to load as I'm actually mid-procedure? How can I bring in third-party content? Because there's some amazing content out there from publishers, et cetera, et cetera. And it was interesting when we first did our first launch, we actually stress tested it to the extreme. We thought, let's start with the most difficult scenario and show that if we can do this, we can pretty much do most things. And what we did is it was actually set up with a surgeon in a camp hospital in Gaza. He set it up just at the side of the bed, and he had a surgeon, a UK-trained surgeon, guide him through the reconstruction of a bomb blast injury to a patient's hand, a young boy who was a kind of breadwinner for his family. And whilst it was great to see the technology, what was the most amazing for us is seeing that this young man has now been able to regain function of his hand and go back to working. And that's the power of technology. It's the impact. How do you change people's lives using technology? And you can see that by the simplicity of it, you're virtually hands-on through any clinical assessment, so pre-op, through consultations, intraoperative, having that center support and post-op. And in the picture on the left, that's actually me. That's my hand guiding and working with surgeons in Vietnam through craniofacial cases. And on the right, it's a colleague of mine in California who was training doctors in Trujillo and Peru for cleft surgery. And I'll tell you a bit more about that in a bit. But when we think about augmented reality, a lot of you may first think about HoloLens or Google Glass, because augmented reality has often been synonymous with the hardware, the wearable, the headset. And are we going to be walking around with these headsets in the next year? Probably not. And so when Google Glass came out, we realized very early on that these hardwares were very, very immature. The concept was phenomenal. I think the future will have these as our day-to-day practice, but it's not something that's going to scale in the next year or 5 years. But I liked the idea of augmented reality. I just didn't like the hardware so much. So what we decided to do is actually deconstruct it from the hardware and take augmented reality and bring it into any single device that clinicians use. And as a clinician, I was the first one to say, there's no way today I'm going to be walking around with this headset. I've got my surgical loops, I've got my headlight, I've got enough I need to wear on my head than to have to wear another bit of kit and a computer there too. And so you can see now Proximie is being used with a whole host of different devices, from the Da Vinci robot, which you saw earlier, to a simple phone. And in any clinical setting, from an A&E referral to a difficult intraoperative case. And as I said, what's important about this is that it is designed by clinicians for clinicians. And I think it's important to note here that programs like the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Program and others are really helping and encouraging clinicians who are seeing problems to take and find the solutions, actually develop them. And that's very, very empowering for us as clinicians on the ground. Because I can say for a fact, a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when I was first interested in innovation, it was one of those things you kind of did, under the table. Not many people saw, you wanted to keep that to one side because you didn't want to be seen to be looking at innovation and entrepreneurial activities. But now things like that give you a real badge of honor, and it's been an incredible program, I think, that NHS has rolled out, and something that's inspired so many doctors to actually look at problems and try and find solutions to them. So I think I just wanted to point that out. But what we found is that through this technology, we've been able to encourage the free flow of expertise, enhance education and upskill of the workforce, from nursing to healthcare professionals to anaesthetists, doctors, surgeons, etc. We've also been able to improve patient outcomes because we know that we're delivering that better care to them at the end. And the patient has to be at the core of all of this. What's also important is that we as clinicians understand that a surgeon is not just about being in the operating room. I may have just one list a week, but I spend a lot of time in outpatients, looking at A&E, supporting community-based. So how do we find one platform that can span all the activities that clinicians face and participate in on a day-to-day basis? And so that was what was important about our platform, that it would be lightweight and something anyone could use. It didn't need 5 reps to come set it up in an operating room and be difficult to sort of scale. And as I said, what we found through that platform, through our early studies, that we're already getting quicker review, quicker discharge, less patient transfer, which is a big problem around the NHS for sure, and probably globally as well, and overall cost savings. And at this point, I just want to remind you of the comment that Atul Gawande wrote about in the New England Journal of Medicine I'd say about 5-6 years ago now, about coaching. And if you look at elite athletes who are excellent at what they do, they're coached. And they have high quality coaches who are helping them go, have those marginal differences that are going to make them, win a gold medal, etc. So why can't we introduce that concept of coaching into healthcare through digital platforms that allow us to coach and mentor each other through technology to excel and acquire new skills? And this is a great example that took place between California and Peru. So in Trujillo, in one of the local hospitals, there was a great plastic surgeon named Dr. Soraya. Great delivering care, passionate, empathetic, loved her patients, really worked, 200 hours a week. But she still could see that time and time again, her patients were coming back with more complications. She wasn't able to get the cleft lip surgery to the result that she wanted. And so she engaged with a charity, Dr. Raj Vyas from University of California, Riverside, who used to fly in, 4 times a year in these parachute missions that we've all done. I've done them for 10 years with different charities, where you go and you do a training week. And that's great, you empower them with some skills, you support them through that. But she was still finding that was, whilst improving things, it was still marginal. So Dr. Vyas reached out to us and said, could I use your technology to try and coach her properly throughout the year, through a more distributed manner where she could really acquire those skills more regularly and know that I was there to support her. And so through that year, he didn't travel once, he set up the platform and he trained her and her team. And they were able to show at the end of 1 year there was 30% further upskill, 40% less readmission rates, and more cases were being able to be done because these lists weren't blocked by revisions. They were actually able to do new cases. And this is a very simple example of where coaching, of where collaboration, of where technology can ultimately improve the patient outcome. And if you think about how clinicians work, it's not linear. You don't just take a skill and then that's it, you've sort of learned it. It's a virtuous cycle of continuous improvement. We plan, we do, we check, we redo, and we constantly look at ways to optimize things. And so it's great to engage in digital technology and platforms that allow you to do that. And then potentially together as a whole workforce, we can all shift the mean towards getting better care to the patients through constantly reviewing, analyzing, through visualization, what we're doing and how we're doing it. And as a platform, as I said, it's very lightweight. There's nothing fancy about it. You log in, it's a simple dashboard. You see your metrics, how much time you're spending on it, what are the clinical cases that are available. And there's a component of a virtual community of clinicians working and sharing expertise. And what's exciting is once you actually get into the live interaction, we've built in content that's being served up in a very lightweight way. So you can see on the lower left side is the Elsevier logo. So Elsevier have integrated all their clinical content into our platform. Their whole clinical key, which is a huge, huge content library, into the platform that we can now serve up simply by voice recognition. So as a clinician, I may be doing a procedure and I'll say cleft lip or mastopexy. In this case, we've said mastopexy while we're doing a breast reconstruction case. And that word will go from voice to text and auto-populate your screen with the text word and the most relevant articles to that text word. So you can imagine as learners or as collaborators, having that content and bringing in is very powerful. We're doing the same with anatomy and with other features down the line. And what you can see here is that this is the system being used for A&E referrals. So I'll just put this on mute. So as you know, hand surgery is a tertiary specialty, and it's in centers, in specialist centers across the country that link into multiple DGHs. And what often happens is patients will go to one A&E department, they'll get seen by that department, they'll be told, yes, we've referred you to this specialist hand trauma center, you can now travel there and they will see you. So they've spent 4 hours in one A&E, 4 hours in another, and still not actually booked for surgery yet. They need to come another day to have that. And that's just one example of some of the inefficiencies that we face. Now we've linked in with West Middlesex Hospital in Chelsea and Westminster, where that's being done virtually. That initial assessment with the hand surgeon sitting in his hand trauma clinic, but simply with a tablet, seeing all the patients coming through the A&E department at West Mid virtually, giving them an assessment and a plan. They're still at their local hospital and they only need to come in once for their operation day. So that cuts out already a step and can save up to £200,000 for one small department a year. And this is from one A&E department. And on the left up there, what's exciting about this one is it shows the use of multidisciplinary care using technology. That's actually a radiologist helping a surgeon through a Da Vinci resection of a renal cancer. So it's two different specialties working together to improve patient outcomes. And of course, this is the case I talked about, but for purposes of time, I won't share the video at this stage, but it shows the use of it in a very lightweight way in a trauma setting. And we're working with a number of NGOs and some military groups to try and support some of their efforts using this technology. But of course, being a techie myself, we still do get a little bit excited with the tech. And so I thought I would show you just a little snapshot of something that we're bringing out in the future, hopefully in the next few months. And we're talking about visualization and imaging and how we can bring imaging into our workspace to improve some of the decision making that we do, such as in hand surgery. So you can see here we can bring a hand X-ray in real time onto the patient's hand. You can lock it and then track it to the patient. So you can mark up where the fractures are. So that helps you intraoperatively and as you're making an assessment. And then as you move the hand, the scan and the markings all move with the patient. And accordingly, he can then mark the patient's actual hand with the scan, informing him of where the fractures are and where it would be best to place these incisions. And now it all moves with the patient. So something a little bit exciting, but we are talking about innovation. And finally, it's about how does that all link in? Because one of the things that frustrates me as a clinician is that I can walk into a hospital and on induction day, they'll say these are 6 different logins. You need to be able to log into each one of these systems, one for the scan, one for the access to the patient details, et cetera. And it's frustrating. And so from our point of view, we're trying to find ways to integrate information in as less number of steps as possible. So our platform actually communicates with all the big EMR record systems, so Epic and Cerner, we've done integrations with them. But also we believe that there's an importance in not just the live application, but also the content. So every time you do a clinical assessment or a procedure, that's valuable information that you can come back to and learn from, or assess a trainee who's done a procedure to give them feedback through a video logbook, which is far more visual and explanatory than just sort of a paper, WBA or a work-based assessment. And so the Proximie Live system works. It connects individual and multiple healthcare systems. It connects an audience who want to learn in real time, from first-year medical students to surgeons at the end of their career. The Proximie user can be more than 30, 40 years old in using the system. We have content from third-party partners fed into the system, so you don't have to log into another system. It's just served up for you there. You have your community that you're building either through your hospital network or sort of the wider global network. And then you have the Proximie library, where every single interaction is tagged and stored with data so you can come back and learn from it. So imagine you did a difficult case for a cancer resection and you wanted to go back and review what was the difficulty, what can you do so that next time you have a difficult case like that, you don't struggle as much. We're very lucky to have a number of great advisors who've been advising us through this journey. I definitely don't want to take credit for this on my own. I've got a great team of clinicians, of engineers, and of advisors who have helped us. And we've been working with some great institutional partners and NGOs around the world as we were initially kind of testing this, stress testing it, and prototyping the different the user experiences and the user journeys. We've also been very fortunate to have won a number of awards, but of course the one I'm quite passionate about mostly is the Foreign Press Association Science Story of the Year, because it was about the patient story, about the young boy in Gaza, and almost the technology was irrelevant. It was just how could we use technology to improve someone's life. We also work with, we believe collaboration is really important. And, the way I think about Proximie is that it's just a backbone for different things to plug in that add value. And it may be that the platform itself just becomes a conduit to link in a lot of important content and technologies that are out there. But we work with people like Elsevier, like Vodafone, Johns Hopkins, and Tima. And we're slowly growing that impact. We're a young company. We're cognizant that we haven't, we're still just starting out. But we feel we've achieved quite a good amount of footprint kind of around the world using this technology. And I think we're just starting to see what this technology is going to do. And I can tell you, just over the last 3 to 4 months, the inbound interest from NHS trusts, from Australian hospitals, from India, has been astronomical. I mean, it's just been amazing and overwhelming for us to actually start to finally reap the benefits of a vision we had, in 2014. And I think this is where most technology is heading. If you can show impact, if you show that it's something that's actually a must-have, not just a nice-to-have, then you will start to see that. It's just about patience and changing hearts and minds. Because I think one of the limitations will always be, as a clinical body, we're very traditional in how we've taught medicine and how we've learned it. And now we're trying to tell everyone there's a whole new way of doing it, a whole new language, a whole new set of systems So you need to adopt it quickly, which is not going to happen. It's a culture shift. And I think that's probably going to be the biggest challenge in terms of how we innovate and how we adopt innovation. Thank you.